Good morning, students. Welcome to yet another online class. My name is Paxton Setou. I believe this is BABJ. I am the lecturer for television production practice 2. I'd like to welcome you all to the very first class of the first semester back in 2023. And I'd like to firstly welcome you all. I know that some of you guys are experiencing load shedding problems. Some of you guys will not be able to join me here on this pre-recorded lesson, but I hope that you enjoy it just as much as I plan on enjoying it and recording it for you guys. I just quickly want to share my screen with you guys so that you guys get to the quintessential parts of this particular lesson so that you guys see exactly what I am doing. Let me start off first and kickstart this lesson with your roadmaps for the very first week. So this is lesson 1. As I said, welcome you all back. I hope that you really enjoy this lesson. So the introduction goes as thus. In this year, you will be immersing yourself in the world of television production. And this lesson specifically focuses on aspects of research in investigative journalism. When we speak of research in investigative journalism, we'll be unpacking the importance of research, why it is important to research, and why it is definitely important to reference, and the difference between investigative journalism, gonzo journalism, citizen journalism, and so forth. But in this lesson, we attempt to view them from the communication practitioner. What is communication? Now, we'll talk about communication further in this lesson and what it means for mass communication. And as Stratcom, when we speak about Stratcom, we are referring to what we call strategic communication as a television practitioner. Whether this person is a newspaper reporter, they're working as part of communication. Whether you are a television production or director, you are in the business of communicating with people. Whether you are in the advertising or as a copywriter, or you're working in the public relation as a specialist while learning and mastering Harvard references. So I would like to kick us with that. So the important aspects or the outcomes of this lesson, by the end of this lesson, guys, I want you guys to be able to understand the role of mass media communication, as well as Harvard referencing, the importance of referencing, and why it's very quintessential as a student, as an academic student studying at Boston Media, to be able to reference and research your work in the most satisfactory and meritorious way. I'd like you guys, as the second point, to recap the 5 mediums of communication in television production practice. Some of you guys may be familiar with the 5 components of communication, one being narrative, the second one being performance, the third one being aesthetics, the fourth one being medium, and the last one being control, which we'll unpack in the later aspects of this particular lesson. I want you guys to also understand the dangers and effects of plagiarism, both as a student of media in the creative economy as well as in the industry. And I want you guys to be able to apply what we call SODEC, which is an abbreviation for S stands for specificity in your storytelling as a journalist. O stands for the originality in the piece and the story that you are covering. D stands for defensibility. How credible is your work when you are working as a student of journalism? And the C stands for contestability. How is your work or your piece of writing or your film contestable with other things and other pieces that are covered in the news medium journalist, which we will unpack in the later parts of this lesson, and applying your academic research as well as understanding what Google Stellar stands for and other research sites in which you can get acquainted to or use as a student at Boston Media House, and not only at Boston Media House, also in the world at large when you graduate. I also want you guys to understand and explore the course's focus on television production with a journalistic aim. These are some of the references that I want you guys to get involved with. How do we reference Harvard references, which we will get to the bottom of. Don't you worry about this roadmap. The contents of this roadmap will then be made available for you guys so that you are able to access it on call campus. I'm aware that registration is still on the ongoing process, so there are a lot of changes when it comes to the timetable as with regards to that, as I do understand that it is the first week of opening, so you guys are getting adjusted to the subjects and so forth. Now, let's get to the bottom of this particular lesson. Let's kick started with journalism. What do you understand to be journalism? Now, I have it written here Journalism is the activity of gathering information, gathering stories about people that speak to relevance. There are four aspects of relevance. First, there is general relevance to the public. The second is specific relevance to the public. The third aspect is conceptual relevance to the public. And the fourth aspect of relevance is the emotional aspect of relevance. How are people moved by your story emotionally, conceptually, specifically, and also conceptually to your work? So journalism is the activity of gathering all aspects of relevance as well as assessing them and creating as well as presenting news. When we speak of news, we are speaking to all four forms of relevance, presenting news and information. It is also the product of all of these activities. So when you combine assessment and gathering and creating and presenting news to the public, which is of public interest, then you are said to be taking part as a journalist. Now, there are four aspects of journalism which we are going to get to the bottom of here at the bottom. Now, journalism can also be distinguished from other activities and products by certain identifiable characteristics as well as practices. So there are four kinds of journalism. We have what we call investigative journalism. Now, the investigative journalism involves purposefully accessing information for deliberately selecting and evaluating causes of your story. When you investigate, so when you investigative journalism is different from all other aspects of journalism. So when you're reading Times Live, when you're reading City Press, for an example, you are experiencing what we call investigative journalism, which involves purposefully accessing these information for deliberately in gathering and assessing and creating and presenting news all to the public. Now, these elements not only separate journalism from other forms of communication, they are what we make it indispensable to democratic societies. When we speak of democratic societies, there are two forms of societies. We have what we call an authoritarian system or society, which is the medium of communication or the governance of communication, which is what we the system that is currently operating in China, where the government is in control of the media and henceforth in control of what people hear in their news outlets, what people see on their television screens when news are presented to them, whether it's Financial Times, whether it's Economic Times, whether it is journalistic or political news that they are presenting. So these are what we call authoritarian societies. Now, in South Africa, we are operating under what we call a democratic society, which is what we call a democratic society, which is unbiased and unprejudicial, which is not journalism that is not definitely involved, where government is involved in propaganda and telling the media what and how to present the news to the general public. Now, history will reveal that more democratic societies, the more democratic society is, the more news and information it tends to have, like you have in this country. For an example, in China and in Russia, you would not have found out about the Palapala case, the saga which happened at Cyril Ramaphosa's farm, for an example, because it is not in a democratic society. So the journalism is bought by the media. It is what we call a parastatal. Now, that is what we call investigative journalism, which is one form of journalism, presenting news, assessing news, creating news, and presenting news to the general public. Now, going to that second type of journalism, which is what we call gonzo journalism. Now, gonzo journalism, if you guys can recall, whenever you are presenting a news or whenever you are writing an article for a newspaper, you are always presenting the news as a third person, and this news has to be verifiable by different sources. So henceforth, as a journalist, your responsibility to give news to the public is also written as a third person. So when it comes to gonzo journalism, this is a form of journalism where the journalist is directly involved involved in a story. So if you are telling a story in Russia and you are directly involved in that story, you write the story and you present the story as part of the story and not as a third person. So that is what we call gonzo journalism, where the journalist is directly involved in a piece of journalism. Now, we have what we call citizen journalism, which is the third aspect of journalism. Now, what is citizen journalism? Now, I will play a video for you guys so that you guys can get to understand what citizen journalism is about and what it stands for. But being a citizen journalism involves reporting and recording news as a member of society. So as a member of the society, remember now, the world is more connected as we speak. People are using social media, they're using Twitter, they're using Facebook as outlets of information to share information to different parts of the public. So now, if you are a citizen journalism where something happens in your area, for an example, if there's a crime or there's a shooting in your area and you have something as short as a mobile cell phone, what you can do is you record and you share that information as a responsible member in your society. This is what we call gonzo journalism, where you record, report, assemble and assess information and share it with the public. So anybody can be part of gonzo journalism. You don't have to be a professional accredited journalist to be part of gonzo journalism. And I will play a video for you guys to remember or to remind you guys what gonzo journalism is all about. Now, the fourth aspect of journalism is what we call watchdog journalism. Watchdog journalism dates back as far as the 1600s. Now, this is the type of journalism that focuses on people in power. We are talking about politicians who are in charge of the media, who are in charge of the government and the daily operations of the country. Now, this type of journalism always keeps politicians and members of the society who are writing parastatals in check. The reason people know about corruption that is happening in this country is because of what we call watchdog journalism. These are journalists that are recording things that are happening in parliament, that are unearthing and unpacking corruption that is happening in different countries altogether. So this is watchdog journalism. So these four aspects of journalism also differ. There's what we call investigative journalism, gonzo journalism, which you can be a part of as a student studying in Boston media. We have what we call citizen journalism, and we have what we call watchdog journalism. And I'll show you guys videos in the not so distant future of how we can distinguish between all these four forms of journalism. There's other aspects of journalism which I want us to cover in this particular project. Now, I want us to move on and speak about the ethics of journalism. What are ethics of journalism? Let me just move forward with this aspect so that we can unpack what we speak of when we speak about ethics of journalism. I wish that many of you students would join me here today so that we can get to the aspects, or if you guys have any questions so far, that you guys can actually ask me these questions that we can continue. But nevertheless, let's get to the aspects or ethics of journalism. The first ethic of journalism. Journalism has a role to play. So the first obligation of journalism is truth, right? Which is the truth. The obligation of journalism is truth. Now, truth. What is the truth stands for? So there is a great acronym of truth, which is T, right? T stands for timeliness. What do we speak of when we speak of timeliness? When you are a journalist or as a student of journalism, when we speak of timeliness, you need to report events that are recent. You can't be reporting events that have not been covered, or rather been covered 10 years ago, because it's not timely. It's not considered as as a timely event, and therefore it does not affect the public currently because it is something that has happened a long time ago. So that is the first aspect of journalism, your obligation to the truth. And what is the truth? And we'll get to three aspects of the truth. This is verification, certification in order to qualify aspects of truth. And we'll get to the bottom of this. I just want us to unpack the acronym of truth, which is the first aspect, timeliness. Now, the second aspect, the R, what it stands for is relevance. Now, there are four aspects of relevance. What we speak of general relevance, specific relevance, we speak of conceptual relevance, and we also speak of emotional relevance, right? The R stands for relevance. Is what I'm reporting or the news that I'm reporting to the public generally relevant? When I report about petrol prices going up as a student and a practitioner of journalism, is it generally relevant to the public? Definitely it is generally relevant to the public. If the fuel is going to go up and the oil prices are going up, it's generally relevant to all motor vehicle people who are users of motor vehicles, people who are using generators, because now it informs their daily decisions of how they're going to use their fuel. It helps them budget better. This does not only affect people who have generators or people who have motor vehicles, it also affects people who are using public transport, because what this means is people who are using public transport will also be not conceptually, but confined to pay a little bit higher because they are users of these daily music, because they use transportation to get to their workplaces, they travel, they use public transport to deal with their personal matters. So it is generally relevant to everybody who uses public transport. It is specifically relevant to people who are producers of petroleum. It is specifically relevant to owners of petroleum companies, owners of generators. It is also specifically relevant to owners of motor vehicles. Is it conceptually relevant? Yes, it is conceptually relevant to everybody, because oil is what we use to power our houses. We use oil and petroleum to have electricity. We use daily oil to use for cooking in our daily houses. We use oil for multiple reasons. So when we speak of relevance, we need to conceptually consider all these four aspects of relevance. So when you are writing a piece, you need to consider the truth aspect, which is timeliness, and the second one is relevance. Now let's go to U. What does the U stand for? The U has to be unusual. When we speak of journalism, you don't want to bore people with an article or a story that is boring, something that is unusual. When you speak of a dog biting a man, there is nothing unusual about that, because dogs bite men all the time. So something that is unusual would be men biting the dog, for an example. So it has to have an aspect of being unusual, or rather unique. Let me write that: unusual or unique. Unique. That is the other aspect of what the U stands for in the aspect of truth when we speak of ethics of journalism. Now, the third obligation of journalism, or rather the T, the other T stands for truthfulness. Truthfulness. What do we speak of when we speak of truthfulness? When we speak of truthfulness, we speak of something that we can verify, that we can certify in order for us to qualify. we are speaking of three aspects of truthfulness because you need to be able to verify information. What do we speak of when we speak of verification? If you are writing a story about somebody, you need to have multiple sources that can verify your truth. You have to, if you're writing about Jacob Zuma, you can't make a story up in your head. It isn't fictional writing. It isn't an essay where you can write your opinion piece. And that is why when we speak of the aspect of truthfulness, we need to be able to verify sources, your sources of information. We verify it through different references or people that are feeding you with multiple aspects of the truth. And how this leads us to the second aspect of truthfulness, which is certification. Once we are able to verify information, then we are able to certify information. Think of an example of going to the police station, for an example, to verify or to certify your identity document. In order for the police to certify you as a citizen of South Africa, they need what we call your identity book to prove that you are who you say you are. That is a form of a verification in order for them to certify you. And once you have been certified that you are who you say you are, then we can qualify you to be telling the truth. And these are the three aspects of truthfulness. Now, going to the H. What does the H stand for? The H in truth stands for human interest. When we speak of human interest, we are speaking about a piece that alludes and actually conceptually and emotionally connects with people on a relevant note. So you can write an opinion piece or write to when you write about technology, you are serving a subculture of people. When you are writing about snow in South Africa, you're not talking about people in South Africa, and therefore you're not serving the people of South Africa. When you're speaking about the broken education system in South Africa, then you are speaking directly to the people of South Africa because they are emotionally, conceptually, specifically, and generally relevant because it serves the human interest of the public, which is the obligation, the first obligation and the ethics of journalism. So it needs to serve a human interest quality. Now, moving on to the second ethic of journalism, which is loyalty. Loyalty to citizens. Why should the media and the reporters or the practitioners and the pioneers of journalists have to be loyal to their citizens? Citizens. When you are loyal to your citizens, we are more moved by your story because everybody values loyalty. It is a code of conduct that we should all adhere to. Imagine having a government that we have now in our democratic society, which is not loyal to serving its public well. It is not loyal to using the money that it's supposed to use for the greater beneficial of the communal beneficiation of their people. So nobody wants to be in a democracy where ignorant leaders of parliament are not loyal, where the same thing happens with the media. We don't want to be citizens that are brainwashed by propaganda because the government and the media outlets in different parts of the world use the media as tools of propaganda to brainwash the society, to let the society move in its what we call the new world order, to let it move. Look what happened to COVID, for an example. This is where the role of media comes into play, where they deceive people and members of the society with their dishonesty with regards to COVID-19. Look what happened to Ebola. That is a reflection of the media not being loyal to the stories which they publish to their citizens. So look what happened to swine flu. It's just disappearing in the air in order to control people through forceful means by using media as a tool of propaganda media to force them to do what they want them to do, to what the media and the government want them to do through forceful means. So it serves the quality of being loyal to its citizens. When you are reporting metric results, for an example, we are speaking to loyalty. You can't be presenting false information to the public because the public deserves to know the truth all the time. And everybody speaks to loyalty. So the loyalty to the truth, and the truth is very important when it comes to journalism, because it isn't a fragment of communication that deals with fictional purposes like the Black Panther or the movies that you see or the sitcoms that you are viewing in television. Now, what is the third aspect of journalism? The discipline of verification. Remember, when we spoke about verification, we spoke about different sources of information in order to qualify and certify information of the truth. So as a journalist, as a loyal journalist, or as a reporter, as a communicator in the journalistic point, as an investigative journalist, you have to have multiple references that you can qualify to show the members of the society that you are in fact telling the truth, because your piece and the news that you have gathered and assessed and assembled that you are feeding into the members of the society is rooted in what we call verified information. Now, what is the fourth aspect of journalism in the ethics of journalism? We speak about independence. Independence from people they cover. As a journalist, if, for an example, Duduzane Zuma was a journalist and he had to write a piece about his father, who happened to be the former president of South Africa, Mr. Gitlekisa Jacob Zuma, he would not be qualified enough to write that piece because it would be based on a bias. So we don't want bias or information that is rooted on bias as a journalist, because you are protecting, you are coming from a person of who you are covering is just as important as what you are covering. If the story that you are covering as a journalist directly involves you, then you're not best to report that story because you are biased to a certain degree. So independence from people that you cover is very important. It's as important as what you are covering as a journalist, because we don't want impartiality, we want independence. We want independence from the government, we want independence from the people that you are covering. So that is the fourth aspect when we speak of the ethics of journalism. Now, the fifth aspect of journalism, you have to monitor how. What do we speak of when we speak of people who are monitoring power? Remember, we spoke about the type of journalism which is watchdog journalism. This is the type of journalism that monitors those we call first-class citizens, or the members of parliament. These are people who we vote for and we give complete power to make daily decisions which are in the public's best interest. So when we speak about people monitoring power, then as a journalist, that is one of the ethics of journalism, to monitor those people in power. This happens in libertarian societies. Libertarian societies, as well as democratic societies. We're living in a democratic country and we're living in a libertarian society because we call ourselves a liberal people who are free from apartheid, who are free from many forms of oppression in our country. So therefore, we need to have an independent reporting journalist, or a group of journalists which are independent from the government, to be able to monitor those in power. And that is where watchdog journalism comes into play. And the last aspect of journalism, or the ethics of journalism, is what we call watch. Listen, which serves to monitor power and searches out those in political power, like the power pala pala aspect which we spoke of. So these are all the ethics of journalism. Now you understand what investigative journalism is and what it's about, what gonzo journalism is about, what citizen journalism is about, what watchdog journalism is all about. And you know now that ethics of journalism, which is the obligation of the truth, which involves timeliness, relevance, four aspects of general relevance, specific relevance, conceptual relevance, emotional relevance. It has to be unique and rooted in truthfulness, where you are able to verify, certify, as well as qualify information that you are serving to the human interest of the public. Second aspect, now you know that the ethics of journalism seeks to loyalty to its citizen. The third one being discipline of verification. Fourth being independence from people they cover. Monitor power in libertarian societies as well as democratic societies in order to avoid being biased and impartial. Now, you know, the third one is what we call the watchdog journalism. Now, let's move on to why academic references. Now, when you are writing a piece as a journalist, you need to understand what academic reference is. Why do you guys believe that it is important to reference? And I'll show you many research sites which you guys should use as forms of your references. Now, the first aspect of why you need to reference is you need to prove that the information that you are reporting to the general public is substantial research. That substantial research has been done to support your analysis. So to prove that substantial research has been done to support your analysis. That is why it's important to reference, to prove that substantial research has been done to support your analysis. Your analysis cannot be rooted from opinions. It needs to be subjected to facts, information, articles, and research written by other people. The second aspect of why it is important to reference is to give credit to other people's work. This helps you, this helps you not present information as your own. You can't just plagiarize. This also helps you avoid plagiarism, because when you give credit to other people, it also shows that sufficient research has been done. So the work and the analysis that you come up with, you give credit to other people's work who have pioneered the same analysis of the same story that you are reporting. The third aspect is to enable others to follow up on work as a journalist. Now, it's important to reference, because when you are referencing other people, when they read the story, they reference you, so they can always, follow up on your work and see if your work is verifiable, certifiable, in order to be qualified as the truth that you are serving to the public, because you have an obligation, which is the 5 ethics of journalism. Now, what is the fourth aspect, right? To avoid plagiarism. Now, what is plagiarism? Plagiarism involves presenting other people's work as your own. To avoid this, you do what we call referencing. to avoid plagiarism. So this is why plagiarism is very, very, very important. Now, there are two types of references, right? When we speak of references, we are speaking about two types of references, which is what we call in-text citations. Now, what are in-text citations? In-text citations are what we involve the author. Usually it has the author's name as well as the year of the publication. This is what we call in-text citations, when you reference the author as well as the year. For an example, if you want to make use of in-text citations, you would write, let's make an example. You could write Smith 2023 in brackets all the time argues that inequality is necessary in democratic states, right? And then you can add some ellipses. So this is how in-text referencing actually works. So Smith is the surname of the author, and the year of the publication, right? So this is what we call in-text citation. The second aspect of reference is what we call a reference list, right? The reference list involves direct quoting, right? How this works is, and let me show you how in-text, or rather how the full reference of this would actually work, right? So referencing altogether involves so many things. It involves the surname, the place of publication, the edition, as well as the title of the book. And I want to show you guys how the reference list actually works. So the reference list actually involves the author's name. Second aspect of it is the year of publication. Third aspect is the title of the book. Third aspect is the place of the publication. And then lastly, the name of the publisher. Now, this is what we call Harvard referencing. For an example, right? So reference list usually comes at the end of your pieces. As a writer, as a journalist, you know, there's the author's name, then the year of the publication, the title of the book, and the place of the publication, as well as the name of the author. Now, for an example, my name is Paxton, so I would start with the author's name. So you would write Paxton Setou, which is my surname, dot the year of the publication, 2023, in brackets all the time. And the name of the book is called The Law of Journalism, right? The edition of the book is called the first edition, maybe, because many people have many different volumes or editions, right? First edition, or just an abbreviation like first edition, comma, where the place of the publication in South Africa. And lastly, the name of the publication. It could be Penguin Publishers, or maybe Jacana Media. I hope you guys are still with me and following. So this is an example of the reference list, right? So there's in-text citations as well as a reference list. So you know the reference list involves the year of the publication, the title of the book, the place of the publication, the name of the publisher, and the example is Paxton Setou, the year in bracket, Law of Journalism, which is the name or the title of the book, the first edition in South Africa by Chicano Media, right? Now, that is how you reference, because a lot of people, we always tell people go and reference and go and research, but we never actually show our students how to do these things. So I wanted to show you guys how to do these things. And I have some reference tips to you guys, which are 3 bullet points that I want you guys to always keep in mind. The first tip is to keep track of everything you've used as soon as you start reading it. It's important to do this because when you start reading something, you keep track of it, because it also serves as part of your reference to give credit to other people's work as a source of your credibility. The second aspect is to make accurate notes to distinguish between your own work and the work of other people, because you are avoiding plagiarism. You need to separate your own ideas and philosophies and communication from other people's communication. Like we said here, Smith argues that inequality is necessary in democratic states, right? You've quoted Smith and you are paying homage to another author's work by making accurate notes to distinguish between your own work as well as other people's work. So it's always best to reference too much than not enough. Now, a lot of students, and I want to show you guys some of the research sites, they do their references on Google Scholar. So there is a website called Google Scholar. So it's not the normal Google that you go to. And I want to show you guys some of these research sites, which gives you access to many academic writing. So when you are a scholar at Boston Media House, you need to start using Google Scholar. Now you go to a website of Google Scholar, right? It'll take you right to Google Scholar. So it's always good to have a profile. So when you go to Google Scholar, the first thing you'll see is my profile. Click on my profile, and if you click on my profile, you write your full name, your surname, your affiliation. If you're affiliated with Boston Media House, write your email there. Areas of interest, it could be journalism, television, media, as well as education. This also helps you when you are writing articles of your own, so that people can also reference you from Google Scholar as part of their academic references, and also to serve interests of your areas of interest. So you do this and you go to the next page, right? Then there's articles and settings. So now let's just go back. I was quickly showing you guys how to do these things. So maybe let's try and the first step of referencing, if you want to, if you are interested in media, maybe you'll say, let's research something. So let's talk about the origin of maybe television. Go to the origin of television. And now what Google Scholar does, it gives you different sites to many aspects of your research if you're starting with your research. And what's nice about Google Scholar is it gives you everything that you want as well as the authors. There's origin of television as civilized or civilizational expression. There's independent television in Britain, the origin as well as the foundation, if you are interested in that, from 1946 to 1962, the origin of television in America, the digital television. So for an example, let's go to the origin of television as civilizational expression. Now, when you click on this particular research, what it shows you is a list of books, right? So this is a book written by Eric McCarmer in the University of Oklahoma. What it gives you is it's cited by one, so you are able to download all of these things as well as read the whole book, right? When you go these things, you can purchase this document or access this document as well as purchase it for $20. So that's part of the research and how you do research. If you want to download it, you go to Cited by One. So you go to Cited by One, you click on it, and it gives you the origin of television as civilizational expression, right? You see cross references. This is why it's very important to cross-reference. Now you see it'll give you all these things. If you want cross-references, you can click on cross-references and you start reading about the book. In this case, because the book is not readily available for you guys, then you'll opt then to then purchase the book, right? So it'll show you into cross-references or other people who have written on the subject matter and so forth and so forth. I was just showing you some of these aspects so that you guys get to understand how to research and going to research and going back to this thing. So in this case, it's just an article, it's not book. So we go back to other sources of information. So you go here, independent television in Britain. Let's read about that, right? So it gives you access to the whole book as well as the author and so forth and so forth. And you also have the option to add it to your library as your favorites. So it added to your library, so you always have access to read about it and also references. So it's not unlike Google. The normal Google is always academic reference. So it's credible work that you can verify, that you can certify in order to qualify, in order to support your own ideas. So I wanted to show you guys how some of these research sites actually work. There's something what we call Wolfram Alpha, which we will not get into the quintessential parts of in this particular lesson. Now, moving on to developing research as well as where to look. When we speak about research and the development of research and where to look and how to look, we're speaking of data. We're speaking of three aspects. There's data, impact, as well as emotion when it comes to the development of your research, because that first aspect when you go to Google Scholar is gathering an assessment of information in order to classify it properly to support your analysis, your stories, and your research factor. So what do we speak of when we speak about data? We speak about the 5 W's, which is what is the subject matter, who is involved in the subject matter, when is the subject matter there, who, what, when you write data. Who is involved, the what is involved, when did it happen, what, who, when, why are you writing about it? What is the last one? What are you writing about? Who is involved? When is it taking place and why? I'll remember the last one, the last W in the next aspect. So when we speak about data, we are speaking to these 4 aspects when you are researching and when you know where to look. So when you're writing a piece of information, always know, as a journalist or as an investigative journalist, you know, what are you writing about? What is involved? What is the story? Who is involved? Who is involved in the story? Who is interested in that story? When did the story take place? Remember, we spoke about timeliness. Did the story take place 14 years ago? Did it actually take place recently? Is it a story that we know about? And why is it important to tell that story? And also, why are you telling that story? Why is it very important to tell that story, and why is it important? Or why did the story occur? So when we speak about data, you need to understand what is involved, who is involved, when is involved, and why are you doing it in the first place. When we speak about impact, what are we talking about when we speak about impact? We speak about many aspects of impact. There's social impact, about economic impact, speak about scientific impact, we also speak about social impact, we speak about economic impact, we speak about scientific impact, and we speak about the political impact. And we can also add the emotional impact. So when we speak or when we talk about development of research, we need to know how does it impact the society, politically, economically, scientifically, politically, as well as socially. Is my story socially impactful? Is it economically impactful? Is it scientifically impactful? Is it educational? Is it politically impactful? Is it emotional impactful? So we need to consider these aspects when we develop our research and we develop our stories as students and pioneers of journalism. You consider what you're telling, who you're storying, when is the story taking place, and why you're telling it. Think about impact, social impact, economic impact, scientific impact, political impact, as well as the emotional impact. Emotional impact. So what emotion are you trying to evoke when you are talking or developing your research? How is it going to affect people emotionally, conceptually? So is it going to affect people conceptually? But conceptually, as well as emotionally. Right? When you are developing the story and when you are analyzing the story, I want you guys to think about the data, the impact, the social impact, the economic impact, the spiritual impact, the political impact, as well as the impact, emotional impact, as well as the conceptual impact. When I'm talking about global warming, how does it affect people socially? How does it affect people economically? How does it affect people scientifically? How does it affect people politically? Those are the kind of stories when we speak about data, what, who, when, and why. When we speak about the emotional impact, the conceptual impact, how does it affect people emotionally? And I want to show you guys I want to play you guys a clip from Third Degree so that you can analyze all these things and areas and code of ethics that govern morality when it comes to broadcast journalism, when we speak about mass media communication, when we speak about research, where to look, how to look, think about data, think about the impact, think about the emotion, think about the aspect of truth, think about relevance, why it's important to relevance, think about loyalty, think about discipline, think about verification. And I want to share with you guys this story that is covered by Third Degree, which is by one of the greatest journalists, who was Deborah Patter. Think about how this particular documentary affects you personally, how it affects you politically, how it affects you emotionally, and we'll get to the aspect and see how journalism is so broad, how investigative journalism is so broad, especially when we speak about broadcast journalism, because broadcast journalism is what we call mass media journalism, because it speaks to the masses, it communicates through people, messages, ideologies, philosophies, and uncover stories and the truth about many aspects of the society and corners of the society of those in power, be it people who are in positions of power in parliament, be it people in the food industry, and so forth. So the next documentary, I want you guys to think about it and analyze it and see how it moves you emotionally and conceptually, and the aspects of relevance as a student of journalism, so that when you create your pieces of information, you are able to research them well and ask the right questions to the right people, having these three aspects of data, the impact as well as the emotion, in mind. Now, without further ado and wasting too much time, here is Third Degree and Deborah Patter. I want you guys to analyze all of these things, and we'll get to talk about it in the not so distant future.
At the Wembley Meat Market in Athlone in Cape Town. You couldn't really find a place more halal than this one. They are one of the lucky ones, but other butcheries may have been victim to an act so offensive that it strikes deep at the heart of the basic tenets of Islam. Tonight we will show you how pork has been sold as veal and other non-halal meats have been portrayed as halal, making a mockery of this deeply spiritual faith. In November last year, cell phone videos were secretly made of the Orion cold storage plant at Capricorn Park in Cape Town. Then leaked to the public. What they revealed was horrifying. Pork hearts shockingly relabeled as veal and sheep hearts and sold to retailers as genuine halal items. Muslims may have unknowingly eaten pork. There were other awful revelations in the video footage. Australian kangaroo meat relabeled as halal chuck and blade. Water buffalo relabeled as beef topside and silverside. Non-halal poultry from Spain relabeled as halal. Canadian milk powder imported as animal feed relabeled as halal skim milk powder fit for human consumption. Owner of Orion, Patrick Gettner, pleaded innocence, said he knew nothing of this operation, blamed it all on two men who'd worked for him, Heinrich van Staden and Tobias Lombard. He claimed they were disgruntled former associates with an axe to grind. It was all a conspiracy, he claims, to drive him out of business. So who really was behind this diabolical scheme that hit at the heart of the sacred laws of Islam and duped consumers into eating food that wasn't what it claimed to be? The relabeling video sent shockwaves through the Muslim community.
For a Muslim, halal is not a choice, it's an obligation.
Halal defines what can and what cannot be eaten. For a Muslim, eating non-halal food is horrifying.
It would play on your conscience because spiritually you've contaminated yourself. It's like having poison unknowingly.
So when reports of the relabeling surfaced, the Muslim community was obviously outraged. In November, numerous Muslim organizations backed by the Red Meat Industry Forum took Gettner to court, determined to put an end to this offensive practice. The outcome? Orion denied any guilt, but undertook to stop relabeling. It was left to the National Prosecuting Authority to lay criminal charges or not. But owner Patrick Gettner remained defiant.
My comments on the case, we're here to defend our position. We believe that we've been very badly hurt by the allegations that have been made. We stand by the fact that we've been blackmailed, been sabotaged, we've been set up. Our Muslim clients are extremely important to us. They've all suffered tremendously as a consequence of these allegations.
To get to the bottom of the controversy, we tracked down the men who made the videos and then leaked them. They were nervous but agreed to meet us in public in a Cape Town restaurant with their bodyguards. Apparently, they'd received death threats. Van Staden and Lombard are the men accused by owner Gettner of extortion and blackmail. They deny this.
I did not blackmail him, I just asked for my money.
Van Staden claims Gettner owes him 1.2 million rand. Gettner insists all payments are up to date. Tobias Lombard talks us through the controversial footage. He explains how workers carefully remove the blue pork labels with heat guns, clean the boxes, prepare them for their new labels, boneless veal hearts.
We also supplied an email for Gary Cox that said the new heart containers of the new hearts that came in is delabeled and ready to go. And this is exactly what it means. They take off all the labels, it's ready. They make the new labels, whatever the customer wants, veal, sheep, or pork, beef. You'll see Noordvlees, that's the company called. And underneath you'll say porkflation. There we go. Varkflation, sorry, varkflation. Okay, there's the milk powder. This is his building. There was our office. And there you will see all the boxes are cleared of the blue labels. You see that? There's also a bit more, but it's still busy there.
The workers skillfully remove the last vestiges of glue from the old labels, making sure no trace of the old label can be detected.
I mean, they were busy with this on a daily basis. There was like from the beginning till the end of the day.
The labeling machines are clearly visible in owner Gettner's office. Fake halal labels are pasted on by a store manager. Expiry dates of chicken grillers are rubbed off, new ones put on. So what was the incentive to relabel? Could it have been price?
It's a big price difference. You import pork parts at 150 per kilo. You import sheep parts at around about 13.50. It's in the middle of the dry goods store. You can't hide there. You can clearly see this is not staged.
And indeed, owner Patrick Gertner does insist the nefarious relabeling was carried out by Van Staden and Lombard in secret, hidden from view by packing boxes. But after visiting the plant ourselves and watching these videos closely, it was clear that it must have happened in plain sight. There is simply no secret corner in this open plan warehouse for anything to be hidden. Orion dubs itself a state-of-the-art cold storage facility, boasting 3,000 tons of freezer space. It may appear sophisticated and professional, but it seems questions about its business practices need to be asked. Coming up, we confront Patrick Gertner.
You know what? I've actually had enough. Thanks.
Welcome back. You're watching Third Degree. We're coming to you from Cape Town. We're here at the Orion Cold Meat Storage. Now, a lot of allegations have been leveled at the CEO of Orion Storage, Patrick Gertner. We thought it best to come and let him answer for himself. We started by asking, were pork and other non-halal products relabeled as halal meat on his premises?
I can't deny that it's happened, and that's what's obviously created the greatest shock. We cannot deny that it's happened, and we cannot deny that some of them took place on our property. The videos are crystal clear with